Hey everybody, Adam Savage here in my cave with a tool tip, specifically about cutting a material that is traditionally very, very hard to cut. As makers, since the beginning of my career, whether it was in theater or in film, I've been confronted with having to modify every kind of material you could imagine: rubber, steel, wood, plastic, and glass. Years ago, Jamie was doing a Perrier commercial. And in this Perrier commercial, we had to do several things, but one of them was that we had to make a Perrier bottle fill from the bottom. It had to fill like whoop, fill full of clear liquid. And the method that Jamie came up with for doing it was actually really awesome and straightforward, but it required a giant hole be drilled in the bottom of a Perrier bottle. Now just picture a glass soda bottle, specifically a Perrier bottle, and you'll notice that they are not uniform and consistent. These are made by blow molding, I think, glass into a mold. And so the insides of the bottle are relatively similar thickness, but there's a lot of variance. Suffice to say that cutting an 1.5 inch hole in the bottom of a bottle of Perrier occupied me for the better part of a week, and it was a freaking nightmare. And I want to talk to you about the solution I found after I did that job, but I want to talk to you about how I did that job. So for the purposes of this story, this little glass injection vial, which is made of very thin borosilicate glass, I think is a great stand-in for this. So I had to cut a hole in the bottom of that. And I don't know if you can see in the light reflections, but like it's not a perfectly flat surface. It's not super uniform. How do you cut a hole in something like that? Well, Jamie's advice was that I use this circle cutter here. I can feel a great disturbance in the force. Makers around the world going, really? Yeah. Seriously, this is what we used. And the way we did it, so this is a circle cutter that you chuck into a drill press. This drill bit goes into the material, and then this steel bit here carves up, does the actual hole cutting. In order to do it in the glass, we had to remove the drill bit. And with Jamie's help and guidance, I ground this steel bit to be very, very shallow draft and thin, so it presented a very small profile to the glass. I used tons of water, and I went incredibly slowly. Literally, we did it in the mill, not the drill press. And that allowed me to sort of incrementally just increase, slightly lower my quill, just pulling out more material. But it was a nightmare. Just picture this bit of hardened steel cutting into glass for hours, at this super high-pitched, awful sound, and glass dust being created, and I'm using water as my cooling fluid. And in a classic bit of this is how things always turn out, I successfully drilled a hole in the first. Oh, how did I secure my bottle? Right, this is a whole nother thing. How did I secure an irregularly shaped object in a milling vise? I actually had to build a plywood holder for it. A Perrier bottle, if a Perrier bottle has a specific feature in that it's narrower at the bottom than in its midsection. So Perrier bottle looks kind of like this. So what I did was I took a piece of wood and I cut a hole out of it that allowed the wood to be pressure fit over this end of the bottle, right? And it couldn't go further because the bottle gets wider. And then I cut another piece of wood with a hole that went here that allowed it to pressure fit on that. And then I pulled those two together and screwed them together and basically built a box around this bottle that held it as rigidly as I could possibly imagine it being held on the drill press upside down. Well, and I then came in and started acting upon it. And the thing you need to know about this technique is it was Jamie's idea and it worked. It worked the first time, but then he said, I'd like a second bottle for insurance. And that second bottle took me like 5 more tries and 3 days. Yeah. And it'd be like, the worst part is doing something like that, the failure isn't at the front. The failure's always towards the very end. The failure mode is as it's breaking through, it'll catch something and everything goes to hell. And that's what happened 5 times before I got that second bottle. So Jamie's greatness as an engineer is he doesn't throw anything out as an idea. His genius is that he ignores his own intuition, seriously, in the pursuit of an empirically based method for achieving the goal he has. So to me, I look at this and I'm like, there's no way I would ever want to use this to drill glass. And I still don't. But the fact is, it worked. And it worked, like I said, the first try. But long after I went through the hell of this, and I still remember how awful it was 20 plus years later, 25 years later, a few years later, after that job, I came across a way to do this thing that's much easier. Way, way freaking easier. And it's not using a glass diamond drill, although I now have some of those in my collection because I didn't have access to those. I didn't know about them and I couldn't really afford them. But there was this thing that happened in the South Bay on the, if I remember, the second Saturday of every month. And it was called the Foothill College Ham Radio Electronic Swap Meet. Later, it became the NASA AIM swap meet. It was the De Anza College swap meet. But way back in the day, it was the Foothill College Ham Radio Electronic Swap Meet. And it was an amazing locus of detritus and decommissioned military stuff and high technology, low technology. I went as often as I could, usually really early in the morning because all the good stuff was gone by 7 or 8 a.m. So I would literally get up in San Francisco at 4:30 in the morning, pick up my friend Frank, and we would drive down to Foothill College to go to the swap meet and wander the aisles. And it was like, man, a whole portion of the 90s was that monthly exercise going once a month. And I still have some things I bought at the Foothill College. In fact, actually, no, not that one. This was my first Fluke multimeter. I couldn't afford one back in the early 90s. They were well over $150. But I managed to get this one at Foothill for like $40. And I still have it, and it still works. Invest in good tools. But at the Foothill College swap meet, I came across a guy writing his name in a crystal wine glass, like using a Dremel bit to punch through the wine glass and write his name in a delicate crystal wine glass. And I was like, I got to get me some of that. And so I purchased a set from him for probably real money, a couple bucks per bit. So like $40 for a 20-bit rack of these. There we go. So this right here is a double helix hardened steel grinding bit. And I am ignorant as to the actual hardness of the steel, but I am very cognizant of what this thing can do to glass. And I have basically this bit would have made that Perrier job last all of 2 hours. The thing that took me 3 days would have taken me 3 hours had I had this technology at the time. And whenever I come across something like that, man, that gets my attention. So I just want to show you what this can do. Now, you're working with aerosolized glass dust, so it is a good idea to use a respirator. And now I'm going to try and talk while I'm doing this, but for the most part, you're just going to watch me do it. But I'm using a little Proxon Dremel that I love so much now. I've put the bit in without a lot of it sticking out because I don't want too much of it sticking out. If it sticks out and it's even slightly off, it'll vibrate and I'll get a lot of vibration back, and I don't want that. So I turn this up to full, and it's actually running nice and smooth. So here we go. Watch this. There we go, look at that. It makes a beautiful mark on the glass right away. Now I can describe where I want my hole to be, and then I gotta get a punch through. And again, I'm creeping up on this. I'm not going full bore, but I'm taking my time, and I'm trying to be gentle. There we go. It's punched through. Boom. Right there. It blew my mind when I watched him do that. And then you can slowly work that hole. Dude. Okay, hold on. Let me take this off here. Sorry. Look at that. That is beautiful. Listen, I long for the day when someone says, we need a big hole in the bottom of a soda bottle, stat. And I can go, I've got the solution, everybody. You can all calm down. Look, you got to take some precautions because you're working with glass, dust, etc. And with something like a soda bottle, like a Coke bottle or a Perrier bottle, it's going to take a lot longer to work through. This is very, very thin, probably 30 thousandths thick glass. But suffice to say, this little bit definitely does its little bit. It's an amazing thing. And I never don't have a half a dozen of them in my Dremel kit. Thanks for watching this tool tip. I hope this saves you as much time as it could have saved me back in the mid-90s. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.